Yahweh Shemel Shai. Yahweh Shemel Shai. Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shai.
But understand thou for thyself, and seek out the glory for such as be like thee. For unto you is paradise open, the tree of life is planted, the time to come is prepared, plenteousness is made ready, a city is builded, and rest is allowed. Yea, perfect goodness and wisdom. The root of evil is sealed up from you, weakness and the moth is hid from you, and corruption is fled into hell to be forgotten. Sorrows are past, and in the end eschewed the treasure of immortality. Let my soul bless Yahweh, the great King. For Jerusalem shall be built up with sapphires and emeralds and precious stones, thy walls and towers and battlements with pure gold. And the streets of Jerusalem shall be paved with beryl and carbuncle and stones of Ophir. And all her streets shall say, Alleluia, and they shall praise him, saying, Blessed be Yahweh, which have extolled it forever.
It's about time, man, because I'm ready to go home. I'm ready to get the kingdom. I'm ready to live. I'm ready to breathe fresh. I'm ready to have beautiful, pure women, okay? Not no strawberry harlots on this side. Ready to have children, man, you can vibe with, okay? Be around brothers. Be around the Lord himself, okay? I'm ready to go and visit places in the galaxy that we didn't know exist. All right, I'm ready to walk on sandy beaches, man, and explore the ocean floors. I'm ready to fly, okay? I'm ready to eat real food, okay? I'm ready to drive a chariot, man. All right, I'm ready to minister to the Lord and to be ministered to, man. Okay, I'm ready to worship Yahweh Shai in its full entirety. Okay, I'm ready for it. We're ready, man. I'm ready to see angels and greet angels.
Barakatah Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh. Barakatah Yahweh Shai.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples for his younger brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners, whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Shai. All right, and what I want to get into, all right, today, is dealing with First Corinthians, the third chapter. All right, going through, the book, of First Corinthians. Okay, and what you're going to see, is a common theme amongst the Corinthians. All right, is that which these are Israelite foreigners, and like I say, out of all, the city states, all right, the Greco-Roman, all right, churches, okay, that the Apostle Paul, was dealing with, the church of Corinth, all right, well, it was the most turned out, by Greco-Roman culture. And one of the things that was a plague to the church was philosophy. It was a city, that was big on philosophy, being deep. Okay, all these different philosophies and boasting, the human wisdom and, trying to be deep. And, Apostle Paul, he had to constantly, humble them, under, the wisdom, all right, the true wisdom of Yahweh Shemal Shai. And it's going to be a reoccurring thing, throughout, first and second, Corinthians, like I said, this was the most heavily, all right, influence, church, by, Greco-Rome, You see that Greco-Roman culture, okay? And it was a city, like I say, sexual, immorality was known for it. That was current, okay, was known for. Like I say, it was like say like a New Orleans, Las Vegas, L.A., New York, rolled in one, you know. So yeah, just want to go into it, and Apostle Paul is going to push home the point, about them being truly, being born again, okay, and also the spiritual house, understanding that, their body is a temple, okay. Like I say, in current, they were wilding, okay. It's a freak show, okay. So Apostle Paul, he has to, reinforce, particular morals, okay, mindsets, all right, and true wisdom of the Most High, to the church of Corinth. So let's go into it. 1 Corinthians 3:1. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when I was with you," this is in the NLT as well. "When I was with you, I couldn't talk to you as I would spiritual people. I had to talk to you though you belong to this world, or as though you were infants." All right, it says the Christian life, but in Yahushua, okay, because they was extremely immature in the spirit, to where the point he had to deal with them as if they was in the world. you know, he had to deal with them like they was, still in the world. Okay, he couldn't really even get into anything when you read verse 2. He says, "I had to feed you with milk, not with solid food, because you weren't ready for anything stronger, and you still aren't ready." Okay? "For you are still controlled by your sinful nature. You are jealous of one another and quarrel with each other. Doesn't that prove you are controlled by your sinful nature? Aren't you living like people of the world?" So Jake wasn't being, all right, conformed to Yahushua. The Church of Corinth, they looked at it like an information grab, just something to add to the wisdom that they already had. Okay? Thinking they had it, okay, when they wasn't on no level in the spirit. You see, because they were so, wrapped up, in all this, philosophy. They were still coming out of their cultural current, their party life, their, their sexual immorality. You see, the pride of life. That he was dealing with that heavy. Apostle Paul, dealing with them, coming from their perspective, man. Okay, and this is why you have here, as you have the book of Peter, which the book of Peter, First and Second Peter, were written to, all the churches, okay, of Asia Minor. Okay, so when you go to First Peter, all right, and he was, confirming, all right, the faith, because this is after, all right, the Apostle Paul, okay, had been beheaded, okay, and Apostle Peter was writing a letter to all the churches, okay, reaffirming, their faith to stay strong, even though the Apostle Paul, had to be a martyr for Yahushua, okay. Peter had to follow up with a letter, to the churches in the spirit, to keep the faith, okay. That's why you read 1 Peter 1:1 said, "This letter is from Peter, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach. I am writing to the Most High chosen people who are living as foreigners in the provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia." Okay, which Corinth, we know, will be, within it. Okay, this was to all the churches. Okay, was I think Corinth will be, of Asia. All right, but when you read, First Peter 2:1, okay, and it reads, "So get rid of all evil behavior." Okay, and see the Corinthians, they was taking in the wisdom, all right, the teachings of Paul, okay, but it wasn't changing their behavior. They just looked at it as some new wisdom, I say, to add to what they had. All right, not understanding that no, this was a new way of being, this was a new way of living, this is a new way of existing in Yahushua. Okay. 1 Peter 2:1. So get rid of all evil behavior. Be done with all deceit. Okay. They were still being deceitful. Like the word is supposed to change. Okay. Our behavior. You see, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Like newborn babies, you must crave pure spiritual milk so that you can grow into a full experience of salvation. Cry out for this nourishment. Okay. And they, didn't desire, the spiritual milk. They wanted to be deep. Okay. For the sake of boasting. You see? But when we come in, we have to crave the pure spiritual milk and grow. You see, the Church of Corinth, they were trying to shoot straight to the top, with just having just this tons of knowledge. They just wanted an information grab. Like I said, they was moving like this was an information grab to add to what they thought they knew already through all these philosophies and philosophers. Okay, they invested a lot into human wisdom. Okay, and not the spiritual things. Okay, but as we come into the truth, man, we must crave, that spiritual milk, and we grow by that spiritual milk, and get the full experience of Yahushua, being nourished by Yahushua. But it starts with what? Becoming a babe. You see, they thought they was on the level. They thought they was mature. They thought they came into the game already mature. Okay, because of the culture of current. All right. With all their philosophy and eloquent speakers and boasting in human wisdom. So they were thinking they had it. And then Paul was like, nah, I really can't even deal with y'all in the spirit. I gotta talk to y'all like of the world, because y'all, y'all still the same OG. Okay. It says, now that you have had a taste of the Lord's kindness. Okay. So they didn't begin to really apply the word, which when we begin to live this thing, because when we come into a camp, or when we even just around the camp on the other side, we begin to see, okay, the spirit of we begin to experience the spirit of Yahushua. Even if you're watching, videos and you're watching, camps, okay, start with Apostle and Elder GMS on down, you begin to experience, men that sincerely care about one another and sincerely care about the church, and that's the kindness of Yahweh Shem Shai. Okay. And the Church of Corinth, they were so, focused on just getting information, to sound deep, to boast in, that's why there was, division amongst one another about who's the deepest and who follow who and who's the deepest between the teachers. And usually they brought that same mindset, okay, of the culture of current into the truth, okay, and it didn't mix. That's why, and they wasn't growing. Their behavior wasn't changing. They wasn't growing in Yahushua. They wasn't experiencing the kindness of the Lord. Like now, and it's going to go further into it on down the chapter. But let's go here to the book of Mark, okay? Because you get the book of Mark, all right, chapter 2, all right, and 22. It says, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the wine will burst the wineskins, and the wine and the skins will both be lost. New wine calls for new wine skins. Okay, so they were trying to put new wine, all right, within their old way of thinking, all right, which is new wine is the doctrine. Okay, the truth. You see, the true wisdom of Yahweh Shem Shai is the new wine. Okay, because we came up on what? The wine of Babylon. Okay, so Apostle Paul is letting them know, all right, that look, y'all gotta lose that shit, man. You see, there's no room for growth because of that old wine, and you still that old wine skin. Okay, when we come into your house shop, okay, we have to be emptied out. That old way of thinking and believing, and the old way we used to function, all that has to be emptied out. And we have to start from scratch with this new wine, and we have to become what? New creatures. Okay? So they were trying to mix, the two, all right? And it was working against them, okay? To the point that they wasn't growing. You see? And then you go from there to what's this? Let's get this 2 Corinthians 5. All right, 2 Corinthians 5 and 17, it says this means, okay, and it's all in NLT. This means that anyone who belongs to a Mashiach has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. Okay, and this is what the Apostle Paul was driving home. Okay, you see, because this is 2 Corinthians, so he's still pushing this same point. Okay, you got to be new. Everything has to become new. Let's read this in the KJV. Okay. 2 Corinthians 5 and 17, it said, therefore, if any man be in Hamashiach, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. Okay? So this is the point that the Apostle Paul was driving, okay, to the church of Corinth. And this applies today because, like I said, we all was cultivated to be anti-Messiah. Okay? Western culture is completely different, okay, from the East. So we was taught, we was cultivated, okay, in to be opposite, okay, of righteousness, man. This is an anti-Messiah society. Okay? So when we come into this thing, we have to empty out everything, all right, we've learned in Babylon. Okay, from school, I'm out, you could have went to Harvard, you see, most of that you got to empty out. Okay, other than your skill or your career, all right, but true wisdom, okay, comes from Yahweh Bashim Al Shah. Even with history, because this system is a brainwashing system. You go into Esau's system, okay, it's to indoctrinate you and brainwash you, okay, just to be a slave and to be in the dark, okay. But as we come to the truth, we come to the light, okay. And darkness and light can't dwell together, man. So all things are become new when we come into the truth, man. All understanding is new to us now. Okay, we come into a completely new understanding. And that's why you go here. Okay. And that spirit of thinking you got it, and you was just this sharp, slick nigga in the world. So you got, you still trying to translate, okay, your way of thinking and your way of reasoning, and and you try to translate that into the truth, it works against you, man. Okay. Proverbs 26 and 12 says, see thou a man wise in his own conceit. There is more hope of a fool than of him. So someone has their mind as if, they're already wise, because of certain accolades of this world, or, they've always been wiser than everyone else that they've been around. And you see, They sharp, wise according to this world standards, and may have been that guy, or you know. So you think you wise in your own conceit, all right? Which the wisdom of this world, okay? Well, you come into the truth with that mindset. Well, there's more hope of a fool, and the fool goes into what being empty-headed. Okay, because at least someone that's empty-headed, you can start from scratch and build up. But someone who think they got it, all right, there's no room for growth. Okay, because they think they got it, and this is what the Apostle Paul was dealing with. So, let's go back to 1 Corinthians 3rd chapter. So he had to constantly break them down. Okay, so they can be built up in Yahushua. 1 Corinthians 3 and 4 said, For while one saith, I am of Paul, and another, I am of Apollos, are you not carnal? Who then is Paul and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom you have believed, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos watered, the Most High gave, all right, the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that water, but the Most High that giveth, okay, the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. Okay, so the Apostle Paul was letting them know they were so hung up about who they was taught by. Okay, who was the deepest between Paul and Apollos, and and you see, they were so hung up on carnal things, not knowing that the Paul and Apollos, all right, they are one in Yahushua. Okay, they're like all the brothers you can learn from. You might come in and okay, and your first video might be GMS Orlando, and they plant the seed of truth. Okay, and then you come across GMS Boston, you watch those brothers. That's the main brothers you watch now. So you've been watered. So you was planted by GMS Orlando. You've been watered by GMS Boston. Okay, but it's the Most High to give the increase. In both GMS Orlando and GMS Boston, they're one and the same. They're all of Yahushua. Okay, or it can be vice versa. It don't matter. It's still under the same, all right, umbrella of Yahushua, and it's the Most High that gives the increase. Okay, we're just laborers. You see, because it's not about us. Okay, it's about the word going out and the elect being edified. Okay, you see, because we're just servants. All right, and the servant is gonna be rewarded. Okay, and then at the end of the workday, and the return of Yahushua. Okay, with Yahushua, he's gonna be like their paymaster. Okay, that's why you go here dealing with the vineyard. Okay, let me get this in the NLT. All right, it says Matthew 21 said, For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. Now, let's prove who the vineyard is. Okay, Isaiah 5. All right, and 7. It said, The nation of Israel is the vineyard of the Lord of heaven's army. Okay, the people of Judah are his pleasant plant. He expected a crop of justice, but instead he found oppression. He expected to find righteousness, but instead he heard cries of violence. Okay, because the leaders are responsible for cultivating the vineyard, okay, of Yahweh Shema Shah, which is Israel. And at this time, Judah had started going left into idolatry, the leadership, all right, the kings of Judah, and this is why the Babylonians came. Okay, but just to prove that Israel is what the Lord's vineyard, and the leadership is responsible, okay, for the cultivation, all right, of, all right, Israel, the vineyard. You see, And at the times that Jacob was being cultivated under poor leadership. Okay. But in this time, the Lord has raised up the prophets, which the scriptures say the Lord will give the prophets for leaders. You go into I think that second Ezra chapter 1, he will give for leaders, and he lists the prophets, okay, which are what cultivate the elect is right now the vineyard, okay, of the Lord of Yahushua, the elect of Israel, which are being cultivated by, okay, the prophets, man, okay, the leaders established in this time, okay, which are cultivating the minds of the hopeful elect for salvation, okay, to separate from this world, okay, and have an expectation in the righteous kingdom to come, okay. So let's go back to Matthew. Just wanted to prove who the vineyard was, all right, and we're the laborers, okay, of their vineyard, beginning with the apostles and elders, all right, and beginning with, their elders before them, going back to Elder Abba Bibas, okay. Matthew 20:1 said, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early, all right, one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day." And see, this is us being called into the truth. Because we was in this world, no matter what we was doing nothing. Okay, I don't care how popping you was, and you had this going on, and you had, that going on, and you was projected to do this. We was doing nothing. Okay, if we not serving Yahweh Shai, we was doing nothing. Okay, so we was called into this thing. Now, of course, you gotta keep putting this out there. All right, of course, we have to work, do what we gotta do. But if that's our end all be all, then we doing nothing. Okay, because just working for this system, okay, if that was our end all be all right, then in the times of trouble, that would amount to nothing. But working for Yahushua in the times of trouble, we were going to have favor. You see? So before we came into this thing, we was doing absolutely nothing, okay, for Yahweh Bashim Yahushua. Okay, because everything that people are doing, whether you, all right, 1,000 there, a millionaire, a billionaire, all right, even trillionaire, you Edomites, it's all for nothing. Okay, you're finna lose. You see? But the work we're doing in Yahushua is forever. Okay? It says, so he hired them, telling them he will pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. And that's us hearing this word and being called into this ministry, man, called into this work. That was Yahushua hiring us. When we heard this word, okay, that was Yahushua hiring us, man. Okay? It says, so they went to work in the vineyard at noon, all right, and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again and saw one more people standing around, all right? So that last hour, okay, his brothers are, steady coming in, okay? He asked them, why haven't you been working today? They replied, because no one hired us. The landowner told them, then go out and join the others, okay, in my vineyard. That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. Okay, when those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. Okay, and this is us being gathered, the chariots, man. Okay, it said when those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed that they would receive more, but they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to the owner. Those people, all right, work only 1 hour and yet have been and yet you've paid them just as much as you paid us, all right, who worked all day in the scorching heat. He answered one of them, friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work, okay, all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others? So that's the Lord's, kindness, all right, that we all gonna get the kingdom. That's the base pay for what we're doing. Now in the kingdom, of course, there's gonna be rank, you know, different brothers gonna have different access and different things, but the base pay for doing this work, whether you've been here from, the beginning, all right, or you come in on the tail end, the base pay is the kingdom. Okay, immortality, new bodies. That's the base pay. You see, that all the laborers are going to get. Okay, so it says, and it's Yahweh Shai kingdom, and that's his kindness to reward those that come in the last minute, okay, with rulership, with status amongst him, okay, with immortality, you see, and you read verse 16, said those who are last will be first, then, and those who are first will be last, because ultimately in this setup, as we're laboring, we're all last in this system. Okay, but we're finna go from being slaves in this kingdom to kings in the next kingdom. You see? So we're finna go from last in this setup to first in the kingdom to come. Okay? So we go to here, let's get this word first. Okay? And right now, I say we're last. We're laboring in last place of this setup at the bottom. Okay? We're at the bottom of this man's social status, laboring in the truth, but in the kingdom, we're going to be the protos.
Strong's G 4413. Protos.
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 All right. It says first in any time or place. All right. It says first in rank. All right. Influence and honor. And all brothers are going to be rewarded with that. Now there's going to be rank within. Okay, the 144,000. The rest of the 1/3 is going to be ranked within that. Okay, but we're all going to receive. All right, their rank. We're all going to receive that. We're all going to be part of their chief influence and honor under Yahweh Shai. Okay, you see. So, it's not about who you learn from, who's the deepest brother, and who. It's not about that. Okay, and it's going to expound some more as we go on into the book of Corinthians. Okay, it's about increasing in Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai, and everybody finna be rewarded. Okay, brothers who are at the forefront gonna be rewarded. Brothers who, all right, don't have a lot of notoriety, they're gonna be rewarded. They're gonna be kings on the Yahweh Shai. Okay, and those that believe on those men are gonna be rewarded. All right, those that believe on Yahweh B'Shem Al Shai through the teaching of those men, okay, and remain are going to be rewarded. Okay, because we all going to have to endure as we're finna get into. It says, for we are both, all right, 1 Corinthians 3:9, it says, for we are both the Most High's workers, and you are the Most High's field. We went into that. You are the Most High building, what? The spiritual house. Okay, because of the Most High's grace to me, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Now, others are building on it, but whoever is building on it, on this foundation, must be very careful. Okay, be mindful how we build. Okay, so we're building up, because when you're building, and if you, and that's why you see brothers do correction videos. Okay, or brothers be, correct each other during, the video, because we have to be careful how we build. See, once you're building something, if you just building and it's a flaw somewhere, and you don't correct that flaw, and you just keep building, well, that flaw, okay, is going to come back. You know, if you don't square something off right, if you don't have it plumb, if you don't have it level, well, it's gonna show. You can go ahead and finish building it, but then if it ain't level, it's gonna show. If it ain't plumb, it's gonna be missing. It's gonna be off. You know, so that's why it's best to what correct it as you're building. Okay, instead of just passing on and going to the next. You see, and that's why the Apostle Paul was big on making sure that the Church of Corinth was going to be built on the foundation of Yahushua. Okay, and get rid of all their philosophy and the thinking of this world. Like y'all gotta get rid of it. I can't even build because the foundation ain't right. Basically, that's what Paul is saying. The foundation ain't right. I can't build. You know, if you don't build that frame or the door right, and you just go on building, but then when it's time to put the door on, and that frame that you didn't do right, now the door don't close. You see, now you gotta try to fight that when it could have just been done right. Just being careful how you built. Now it's a fit. You see, now you got that function of the door. Okay, so as we're building, we have to be careful. How we build. Okay, we use certain things that take time. It's better to spend that time on the front end when you're building than to have to fight with something on the back end. Okay, it's best to take your time and do things right on the front end. Okay, and the rest of the building can go all smooth. And that's why that foundation has to be in Yahushua. Okay, it can't be in philosophy. The Church of Galatia, they tried to make their foundation the law. It can't be the law. Law is good, but you can't build on the law because we can't stand on the law. But we can stand on Yahushua. Because of grace, we can stand on it. We can teach, we can grow, we can edify, we can learn. We can operate as brothers all under Yahushua. Okay? You try to, build on the law where it'll be so much offense that we can never get nothing done. Okay? And you try to build on the philosophy of this world, all right, then it'll just be chaos. All right, here it is. This whole earth is in chaos. All right, and this nigga Esau supposed to be so goddamn smart and have this and that, and this shit chaotic as hell. Okay, so you got to build on true wisdom, all right, and balance, which is Yahushua. That's the foundation. Okay, which he's going to get into when it says, because of the Most High's grace to me, I have laid the foundation. Okay, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Now others are building on it, but whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. Okay, for no one can lay any foundation other than we already have Yahushua or Mashiach, and that's the foundation of what we're building, this spiritual house. Okay, let's go here to 1 Peter again, same chapter, 1 Peter chapter 2, and we just continue on. Okay, you see Apostle Peter was driving home. Okay, he was doubling down on points made, by the Apostle Paul, to these churches, these Israelite foreigners. Say 1 Peter 2:4, it says, you are coming to Hamashiach, who is a living cornerstone of the Most High's temple. He was rejected by people, but he was chosen by the Most High for great honor. All right, and that cornerstone is where you measure everything else off of. The measurements of the whole building is based on the cornerstone. Okay, so our doctrine is based on Yahushua. Our conduct is based on Yahushua. Okay, our template for teaching is based on Yahushua. Okay, everything that we do is based on Yahushua. Prophecy, Yahushua. Okay, it's all about the second coming of Yahushua. You see, so everything that we do is measured by this cornerstone, Yahushua, and the cornerstone bears, all right, the weight of the building. Okay, which is the church. Yahushua, he bears the weight, all right, the responsibility of the church, of the whole church. You see, he's mediating for the whole church. Okay, there's provision already provided. How Shai got this thing mapped out. Okay, the Heavenly Father through Yahweh Shai has this thing mapped out, man, for us, man. Okay, their responsibility, sending down this spirit to the teachers to teach what Yahweh Shai is at the forefront of that. He's facilitating, okay, the revival of, the church, the true Israelites. Okay, he bearing that responsibility. You see, he bears the responsibility of the cross, that sacrifice. Now he's in the heaven as that mediator. Okay, it says he was rejected by people, but he was chosen, all right, by the Most High for great honor. And you are living stones that the Most High is building into his spiritual temple. What's more, all right, you are his holy priest through the meditation, all right, of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. You offer spiritual sacrifices that please, okay, the Most High. Let's read this in KJV. 1 Peter 2:5. It says, you also, as lively stones, are built up a spiritual house and holy priesthood, okay, because we're priests in training. The scriptures say the Lord is going to make us kings and priests in the earth. Okay, so we're priests in training. The order of Melchizedek, we're rehearsing their priesthood now. Okay, well, the priesthood is open to different tribes outside of Levi. Okay, so we're doing the office of a priest, these spiritual altars. Okay, we're the sacrifice, we're constantly, sacrifice, putting ourselves on the altar, as we teach. Okay, it says to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to the Most High by Yahweh Shai HaMashiach, who is the high priest of the spiritual temple. You see, Yahweh Shai is the high priest of this spiritual temple. Okay, so this is what we're building. All right, the house of David, okay, is being raised up, is being built. Okay, by the prophets. The prophets through the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shai are raising up, okay, the house of David, which is the elect. Okay, this is okay, so what the restoration of Israel. Amos 9:11 says, in that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days, okay, I will build it as in the days of old. Okay, so this is a spiritual house that's being built, the tabernacle of David. Okay, and we are that house, because what did the temple represent? The presence, okay, of the Lord dwelling amongst Israel. Okay, now we as a collective, we're that spiritual house where the presence of Yahweh Bashim Shai dwells amongst his people. Okay, even when you go here, we'll get it and read down some more, and we'll get it. Okay, this is back in 1 Corinthians. Okay, 3:12. All right, this is the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 3. Okay, in verse 12 it says, anyone who builds on that foundation may use a variety of materials: gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. So on that foundation is on Yahweh Shai. And see, we want to build of the highest quality we can. So as we teach, that's why I say as we, invest into this truth, man, as we really tap in, become occupied in this thing where we're able to build, okay, because us becoming the best, all right, version of us in the truth makes us more potent to build with high quality, man. We want to build with high quality, man. Tap into this thing. You see? And it says, but on judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. Okay, what we're building, because each brother, you know, uh, we have our own, channels. And you see, I'm saying we're all building, together. You see, it's individual projects, but we're all working on the same big project, man. Okay. So on the day of judgment, fire or affliction is going to reveal, what kind of work we've been doing. You see, those that have, been listening, okay, is going to reveal, all right. Because see, it takes, like I said, because you can build something and on a nice sunny day, the building looks great, okay. But when it rains, it's going to reveal any flaws. See, that rain, you can have a nice building. You can sit under the shade, cool, summer day. All right. But then the rain gonna reveal what their roof like. Okay, it can look cute and it can, you probably did sweat. Okay. But if it was a corner cut somewhere, that rain gonna show. Okay. The rain gonna expose it all. Okay. That wind, you think you got something sturdy, that wind. Okay, that wind gonna show what you got. Okay, and this the times we're coming into. We're coming into, the time of storm. Okay, and that's why also as those that are listening, you see, because if someone's listening and they're not a doer of the word, okay, well it's gonna show in the time of affliction if they're really not serious about this. They really, haven't committed. Okay, well, affliction gonna show. You see, that's one thing about this affliction. You ain't gonna be able to hide the flaws that, like I say, when things are cool and sunny, flaws are hidden. Okay, but when affliction comes, when that rain and that wind comes, okay, it's gonna show exactly how everybody is built. Okay, it's gonna show what type of work we got. You see, that's why even when you read this again, it said, but on judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. Okay, because you go here. You see? And this is why, because each brother got their different portion of faith. And we just want to maximize whatever our portion is. We want to be thorough. And whatever our portion is, whatever our office is, we want to be thorough in it. Because this doctrine, it could be tedious. Even in this simplicity, there's a tediousness to it. And also, you want to, let's go here. Let's get this in the KJV. Also, we want to, tighten things down. You see, it's another thing. You want to make sure, because as we revisit, the milk, they're just tighten down the bolts of the foundation, because you can be done with a building, but then you have to go back and, check bolts and check this and check that and, tighten this up and strengthen that, because you can go back and strengthen a building that's done. You can go back and add, strength to it, add more stabilization to it, And that's why, we revisit the milk, or we go over, particular things, repetitive, they're just strengthening, okay, parts of the building. You might notice a lean here, you got to go make that adjustment. You see, he said, Luke 6:46, it says, and why call you me Lord, Lord, and not do the things which I say? Whosoever cometh to me and heareth my sayings and doeth them, I will show you to whom he is like. So living this thing is making us firm in Yahweh Shai. Making this our life is making us firm. Okay? You know? It says he is like a man which build a house, going back to building, and dig deep and laid the foundation on a rock, Yahweh Shai, the cornerstone. And when the floods arose and the stream beat vehemently upon their house and could not shake it, for it was founded upon a rock, it was on good foundation, so it didn't slide. Okay? And then it says its roots, okay, were deep. Okay? You dig deep. And also when we're sincere, okay, and we're living this thing, okay, and we make this, our life, because someone that's serious about their work, you can tell. You see? So this grace period, we it's about us becoming solid and really being rooted, okay, in Yahweh Shai, okay, because there's storm, all right, which is basically the time of affliction, tribulation, with Esau is going to be a major part of it, okay. With those that are truly built on Yahweh Shai, they're going to be indestructible, okay. They're built to weather the storm, and we pray that we're of those that are built, to weather the storm. Said, but he that heareth and doeth not is like a man that without a foundation built an house upon the earth, against which the stream did beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. Okay, so just being around, because you can be around for years and you just hearing and really not applying. You just, you just hear, it's hangout. You appear to be on point, but you're not, and you just here hanging out, and you're really not growing, and you get all these other motives, and they're just a convenient situation for you. Now you're around a network of people, and you can do this. Okay, but when affliction comes, it's gonna show. We're not gonna be able to the bullshit the affliction. Affliction gonna show all the flaws. It's going to show all the impurities. It's going to show all the weak points. Okay, the soft spots. The affliction is going to show all that. Jacob trouble, tribulation is going to show all that. Okay? So, going back. All right? That's why we want quality building. These Jakes that got all these followings and boasting, and their followers and views, and okay, but what the quality is though? You see all these people that follow these other camps with all these numbers and views and the clickbait, and Jake on the flyer like they some Marvel hero or got some AI about them, and okay, it's cool, it's cute, there's a lot of numbers. Jake got shields, Jake Jake got shields. Okay, then did a whole Western movie. Okay, but when that storm comes, everybody's work finna be tested, man. How we built as teachers, how what we built as those that follow. Everybody's work gonna be tested, man. Okay, as we build on Yahweh Shai. And it says every man's work shall be made manifest. Let me go back to the KJV. All right. It said every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man works abide which he have built thereon, he shall receive a reward. If any man work shall be burnt, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire, was they barely, getting through. Okay, so as teachers, as we teach, and I say we are teaching on the foundation of Yahweh Shai. Okay, and you can have believers that are not sincere, not serious minded. Okay, You see? And in the time of affliction, you know, they just throw everything out the window. You know, it's like, damn, you did all that building, you know, but you stay faithful as a teacher. You know, you're going to make it, okay? But those that weren't sincere, hey, you know, you're going to suffer loss. You know, that work put in, you're going to suffer that loss, okay? But the teacher's still going to, all right, make it, man. Okay? It says, know ye not that ye are the temple of the Most High, and that the Spirit of the Most High dwelleth in you. Okay? You see that? So we're the temple now. We represent the presence, the collective body of believers. That's where the presence of Yahweh Bashim Shai is at, man. That's where the Spirit of the Most High through Yahweh Shai is dwelling is amongst the believers. Okay? If any man defile the temple of the Most High, him shall the Most High destroy. For the temple of the Most High is holy, which temple you are. Now, how do you defile? Let's get this word. Let's get this in the AMP. How do you defile the temple? You know, firstly, you know, wickedness, all right, adultery, and you know, defiling your temple. Okay, well, another way is spiritual adultery. When you go to the AMP, it says, if anyone destroys the temple of the Most High, corrupting it with false doctrine. Okay, corrupting it with false doctrine, the Most High will destroy. All right, the destroyer, for the temple of the Most High is holy, sacred, and that is what you are. Okay, so you know, sexual lewdness, like Alazar. You know, he supposed to be in the temple. His body was supposed to be a temple. Okay, he defiled it with lewdness. Okay, and false doctrine as well. Okay, but now with the temple, that's why there's a certain conduct and there's a certain doctrine. Okay, that's permitted to be in the temple. Okay, a false doctrine is like bringing an idol into the temple. You see, first, back in 1 Corinthians 3:19, it says, "For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with the Most High, for it is written, He taketh the wise in their own craftiness." Man, going back to Job 5, and this is Job 5 speaking of Esau. Okay, because here it is, like I said, Esau boasts, okay, and his wisdom. You know, he's all about getting this data and that data, and you know, this and that, and you know, he's just all over the goddamn place. You know, he just got to have this data and just this and all this wisdom and trillions of dollars, and it's going to fail. All right, and it's not true wisdom. Okay, there's a lot of hype and vanity. Okay, and it's very, all right, counterproductive to life. Okay, so Apostle Paul is quoting this in Job. Man, in fact, let's get it. You know, it's always good to teach about Esau failing with the madness he got going on, but he boasting in wisdom. You know, he think that and Esau think his wisdom is above the Most High wisdom. Job 5:12 said he disappointed the devices of the crafty, so that their hands cannot perform their enterprise, which is their new world order. You know, and this nigga think that he can collect enough data to become the Most High. Super stupid. Okay? All right, you think that his finite, all right, mind, okay, can collect enough data and become likened to an infinite power. Okay? Super stupid. It said he taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the forward is carried headlong. Okay? So Esau is about to be taken in his own craftiness. And so Apostle Paul is telling them, look, y'all so, you know, into the wisdom of this world, man. That's all this shit foolish. It sound good, you know. They got a point every now and then, but that ain't it. Okay? And it says, verse 20 says, and again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. Therefore, let no man glory in men, for all things, okay, are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world, life or death, or things present, or things to come, all are yours, and ye are, all right, Yahweh Shai's, and Yahweh Shai is the Most High. Okay, So he's letting them know, like, look, you have access to true wisdom, and that whatever circumstance you in, okay, because these philosophies will go into all these, deep mystic, so-called knowledge, and about life and death and your circumstances. And Apostle Paul, like, look, man, okay, you have access to all these teachers. Just like now, we have access. We can go learn from all the apostles. We can click on their videos and learn all these different camps, the brothers within the camp. So we have all these different access to this knowledge. All this for our growth. Okay, and the things that happen to us in the world is for our growth. The chastening. If we're of this truth, we're being chastened. That's for our growth. Life or death. Guess what? If we die in your house shot, we still good. If we live for your house shot, we good. So Apostle Paul, like, look, everything yours, man. You good. Let's just grow in your house shot, man. All right, you have access to everything you need. And whatever circumstance you in is working for you good. That's why you go here to Romans 8. Okay. They were trying to be too deep, and they were looking into things too much, and it was like Apostle Paul, like, chill. Romans 8:28, it says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love the Most High, to them who are called according to his purpose. Okay, so everything works for our good. Okay, life or death. Okay, all the the Lord have access to these teachers, whatever circumstances we in, and we're called according to the purpose of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. Everything is working for our benefit. Okay, whatever circumstance we in, and we of the Most High, and we of Yahweh Bashim Al Shai is working for our good. We're constantly being refined, and constantly being tried. Okay, we're constantly being corrected. Okay, and the Lord does that through teachers, through life, whatever resource he wants to use, but it's all working for our good. It's working for us, man. Okay, so that's the point. Just want to get into that, Lord will. You brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again, and give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua Bahashem Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers, in peace and blessing salutation, and hopefully shalom.